Yeah, so I even think prospectively the courts would agree that if a person is acting in some sort of claiming to act in a role pertaining to health interests, then what they owe to society is proof that their judgment isn't convoluted by their religious beliefs. I'll be back. Back when I would read about Manson's choice to wear cosmetics to more or less help him confront and approach society and large crowds, I chose to do something along. I had a similar ethic behind why I chose to be a DJ, because in school I was never good at speeches, talking to the whole class. I would get too nervous, so I thought I needed to fight against that. Now that I've learnt to be that way more or less automatically, I need to fight against it and destroy it, and so I chose DJing. I tended not to wear cosmetics while DJing unless the person who had hired me had requested it. But yeah, I'm not completely closed to the prospect that in the future children will laugh at the word supernatural. Yeah. Thank you. I think Bowie saw it. He can see a trend arising where it's going that way, and we're starting to go, like out with the supernatural. For every supernatural judgment a citizen makes, there's one natural error in judgment that they'll make. So we shouldn't give any concession to the claims of the supernatural. You know, at the moment we've got it's like the media companies are trying to say, you know, let's attend to this sense of this aptitude and capacity for conspiracy in society by screening documentaries about people trying to prove that the government would conceal evidence of extraterrestrial life and UFOs. And all I think is ultimately going on there is now we're in a space age era in history. Corporations can have radars, and there's 1,001 ways that companies can, you know, violate your privacy rights. So I see that manifesting in dreams where members of society are truly having these dreams about the government wanting to conceal knowledge of alien life, extraterrestrial life. I just see that more or less emerging in society because the citizenry don't know how to go about safekeeping rights like the Privacy Act in a world where companies can have radars. So there's an element of helplessness there. So when they try to tell the story of that helplessness, it comes out as, you know, oh yeah, the government doesn't want us to know that they already proved the aliens are there. They didn't want to tell the society. It's coming out like that. So yeah, I mean, if you think about the lengths of idiocy that people can go to, supernaturalists, you know, they could believe that their shit is a blessing from a lord, and you'd be lucky to touch, you know, my shit because I'm on good terms with Lucifer, and the Freemason Church is so much superior to the Christian Church, blah blah blah. You know, they think their shit doesn't stink. But unless they can prove to us empirically that they've found a dimension in which we can exist that is not part of nature, then what right have they got to say supernatural, I affirm supernatural anything? The word is a lie. It's beyond nature, it means. It means beyond the natural. And it ends up being a story about incest in a Garden of Eden. It's fucking retarded. You know, they mean to convolute nature and confuse you about nature. That is all that they mean if they say, but we are supernatural believers. And I'm prepared to go as far as Nietzsche once did and say that is what they do, whether they know it or not. Because that's one weakness in reason, is that it is possible to misdescribe things. You know, there's a car accident and the NRMA report is different to what the Amy report would have been. Lucky you're with Amy, NRMA for HELP. You know, it's your car crash. There are insurance claims from both sides. If you were with Amy, would the report on that car crash be exactly the same as the report from the NRMA? How do you know? Now, so if human reason can have its limits, you don't want to even come up with words like supernatural. Now, you may as well wear a shirt saying I'm a fucking idiot. I'm a fucking idiot. The word supernatural is a cogent concept. It's coherent and actually means something real. No, it doesn't. It actually means they're fucking with what's real. That's where I think it comes down to. If you killed the religion out of our political leaders' heads, how motivated would they be to pacify foreign countries? You know, we're not invading. We just believe we're here to help and get to the truth. We just believe we're getting to the truth. No, that's why supernaturalism is like a virus. It just moves to eliminate itself. It's like a suicide mission. So yeah, as I was saying, anyone acting in any sort of healthcare official capacity needs to be able to say that their work is not convoluted by supernatural beliefs, or else they'll come out with stupid assertions like a video console makes you insane. It's like, wow, your church must be fucking incredible if you're coming up with assertions like that. They didn't have TVs in videos in the 16th century, did they? So you've discovered video makes people insane. Nice one, Cairns. So sadly, the owners of Capital Chemist will learn that if they tell me they won't violate my privacy, and they do violate my privacy, then the trade-off is that their business goes public in ways that they were never ready for. And that's an antichrist's response to religious discrimination in healthcare. So also you could potentially be against ideology. And men like Gary and Roger will want to say you're part of some sort of ideological cause, for the glory of which you would commit atrocities. So you end up working out they're the ones involved in an ideological cause, and they do go to certain lengths not to admit it to society. And it's easy to see why, because once they do, they're liable to be indicted for religious discrimination in various ways. They're also a lot susceptible to be told that they're actually unfit to assess, sanity, the difference between sanity and insanity, because arguably that Masonic religion of theirs is a form of insanity. So I suppose my advice would be, I mean, you grow up and you do notice that every citizen has some philosophical comprehension of what life means. And that's foundational to how a person lives. So if one reason philosophy is great and fascinating is because if everyone's like that, you study philosophy only to learn that every way you've evaluated the meaning to life is completely debatable and questionable. And you learn that everyone is more or less taking certain things for granted simply because they're not reading about alternative perspectives. But then one scary realization is that certain people who do enthusiastically subscribe to affirming a particular ideological movement are going to make error upon error because they're not prepared to call their own beliefs a load of crap. So that's their choice, is see that your beliefs are crap and we don't care about them at all. Or make professional errors that will disgracefully embarrass your whole profession. And that's your only choice at this point. You know, you see it in the 90s, Manson excuses them in hatred. It's not your fault that you're always wrong. The weak ones are there to justify the strong. Yeah. Pitifully predictable. Okay, another deleted recording. So as I was saying, the video psychosis profile that they're trying to say pertains to me, it would reduce to moments where Roger's pharmacy company would monitor me in some way at home while watching TV and video, and them concluding that if I'm silent while watching a particular video, then they can say, I believe in everything that was in that video, just on the basis of my silence. Which in my mind means that I've potentially suspended judgment. I'm still evaluating what I watched, and I have yet to form opinions and views concerning what I've watched. But as I said, they're from the 16th century Masonic church, and they don't accept the concept of suspension of judgment. I think it's a very important concept. It's also important to know what a false dichotomy is. If you're given, you could be given an either-or option by someone, and it could be bullshit. Either you're going to heaven or you're going to hell. We know now both are bullshit. So that's a false dichotomy. Another person also cannot tell you that you're either for or against. You have to be for or against something. I've questioned that, because you can be indifferent. But the question is, does being indifferent mean you're against something but you don't want to come forward and say why? That's an interesting question, but the suspension of judgment is a valid, it's a real thing, and its importance was stressed during the centuries of the Enlightenment. So both the Muslims, the Islamic Church, and the Freemasons don't really appreciate it. Yeah. So Roger's religious principle, seeing is believing, he just tries to extend it to absurd lengths. Oh, Luke believes everything he sees on video. He'll be saying shit like that. And he thinks it's an innovative profile because Lucifer in his Mason church, it's the 16th century, you know, they didn't have videos then. Surely this will be such an impressive profile. It's a retarded profile, and you just made Capital Chemist look fucking retarded. And someone's got to drive the nail into the coffin, and it seems like a job for me. Don't say I never told you from the start. No disturbing Luke at home. Yeah, Gary and Roger's first study should have been why the Freemason Church makes false claims, existential false claims, and is bullshit. If they were able to work that out, then they would make an intellectual advance. Because at present, I just don't think that if they try to study you, their vocabularies just aren't sufficient. They don't know how to marshal the right choice of words to adequately describe who you are and what you've gone through. So they'll just come up with some sort of daft, superstitious, ad hominem, muck profile, as they have with video in this case. Yeah, so instead of trying to say that you and I can go crazy from video, they should have looked into the theological assertions of the Masonic Church and eliminated them as bullshit unless the assertions of the Masonic Church can withstand critical scrutiny and being contrasted against known logical fallacies. The likes of which you might find in the ebook How to Win Every Argument. That book is interesting because it explains how and why forms of reasoning can be convoluted and prone to mass errancy. So you learn to be cautious when you study logic. You learn to be quite cautious and reserved, because in the process of trying to say what something is, you might essentially just disclose to the populace that your own mind is so riddled with stupid errors. So instead of being a successful social scientist, Roger Tolles just pretty much said, let me show you how Freemasonry made me a fucking moron, full of dumb assumptions. He'll try to interpret your art on your behalf for you. He'll try to say the artists that you admire are people that you want to sleep with and have sex with. But what does that say about him for him to try to make that judgment call? That means he's the sort of person to invade your privacy, watch you watching artists on TV, and preclude that you want to have sex with them after he invades your privacy. What does it say about him in principle just to say that you can't interpret art that's interpretive? It essentially says he works against the individual's right to think. So if that's what being put onto the Mental Health Act means, people who have some sort of degree of professional security because they've started a pharmacy franchise now have the right to work against your right to think. That was the joke talking to the lawyer, the mental health lawyer. They said, well, the Human Rights Act says this. Yeah, but you're on the Mental Health Act. I was like, are you saying I'm not human? That I can't comprehend this rights charter? Oh, I'd like to go to court then, if you want to try to say that. When can we go to court? I think it's wrong for health officials, healthcare professionals to think they can be the courts, then the cops, and the judge and the jury and the executioner, and that they have this profound insight into why the human mind may be conflicted. Watching them move on against people that think more critically than them. Oh, surely you must be so conflicted that you need these $1,000 a month rebatable antipsychotics. It's like, just for trying to imply that I'm psychotic, I'd like to take you to court next week as soon as possible. It's wrong. You work in healthcare because you don't want people to be sick, not because you want to cull the population and represent as many people as ill as possible, because you're invested in risperidone. That was what I enjoyed about pharmacy, where the locums saying, if you do your work properly, you won't have people coming into this pharmacy at all because they won't need it, because they'll be too healthy. That's what I admired. That was why I worked as long as I did in the profession, despite the attrition from these religious owners. I wouldn't be surprised if they have wacky views like Mother Teresa did, that the poverty-stricken are blessed by God, that God made them especially poverty-stricken so that God could also appoint Mother Teresa to lay them down on mattresses and feed them. So their poverty was a blessing, so that Mother Teresa could make it better for them. Just the fact she thought along those lines, I think, is disgusting. But then you watch Gary talking to sick people, and he's like, "Yeah, love, hello, love, hello, love." Like, he was fucking married to them. It's not a fortunate thing that these people get sick. But that seems to be the path that managers go down. Is they're like, well, we know from our rebates that the antipsychotics are great for our revenue. So somewhere along the line, they lose the view that being sick is not a good thing. And I just think that's not right. That's where I would rather leave. Basically, a religious believer who is also operating as some form of scientist is a person who believes they can look for something that isn't there and find it. And that's why I'm against them. That's why I want to make them regret that they found me. So what I have in store for Gary Cairns and Roger Tall begins with them coming forward and saying, we genuinely believe that we can look for things that aren't there and find them. And then the people of Australia will laugh at them and call them fucking idiots. They'll say, we know what matters, everybody needs us, and we believe we can look for things that aren't there and find them. And we'll go, huh? That's part of what's going to happen. I also do genuinely think that Roger Tall's view of homosexuality is it's extremely convoluted. He has it tied up in his belief, once again, that it stems out of embarrassing moments between the person and their mother. And he seems to think along those lines. I'm not gay, but I do defend gay rights movements. And homosexuality has naturally emerged as a sexual preference for someone of the same gender. It doesn't. The focus would be on who they prefer, not not that they're concealing an embarrassing moment about them and their mother while growing up. And if Roger Toll wants to continue insisting that's what homosexuality is, I would suggest that maybe there was an embarrassing moment between him and his mother, and because of it, his voice didn't drop, and he moved from Tasmania to Australia and started Capital Chemist. And yeah, that's pretty much what I see. I think his view of homosexuality is truly offensive to homosexuality. And Roger's probably a motherfucker. Yeah, I pretty much also think that Roger Toll's view of homosexuality is insulting. He seems to have it very tied up in arguments and assertions that a given person has been embarrassed due to an incident, one or more incidents between them and generally the mother and the family. He seems to say, I'm not gay, but I do defend gay rights movements, and I think that homosexuality is about a preference towards a person of the same gender as oneself, and it's pretty much about that preferential valuation, not running from the concealment of an embarrassing moment between oneself and one's mother during growing up. And if Roger Toll wants to persist with saying that about homosexual people, then I would suggest he's concealing an embarrassing moment between himself and his mother while he was growing up in Tasmania, and possibly around the time that his voice would have otherwise dropped and become emasculated and deepened. So ask him how he defines rights movements. Actually, given the capacity for critical thinking that Roger Toll does have, it's impossible to explain why he hasn't mocked the Freemason Church substantially as a load of crap and bullshit unless it does something for him personally. So that's why I've listened to what he's had to say about homosexual people, that he thinks they've been sexually embarrassed by their father, and there was an embarrassing moment or more between them and their mother, and that's why he thinks homosexuals exist. I think that's repulsive, and if he's that willing to come forward saying things like that confident, maybe there was a moment for him in Tasmania around his adolescence, even if it affected his voice dropping. And he had some sexually embarrassing moment between him and his mother. His father told him off for it. So he likes the Freemason Church because Lucifer doesn't tell him off for it. Lucifer doesn't go, Roger, you get away from your mum. Lucifer accepts him in spite of it, even. Otherwise, he wouldn't be profiling people, wanting to profile people in Canberra, and tell them that their heads are fucked for various reasons. Unless he was also saying, the Freemason Church is fucked for these reasons. But he doesn't do that. Instead, he enjoys the Freemason Church. But he knows he'd be a better profiler, and no one would dispute his profiles if he could reason better. So he should be attracted to reasoning so well that no one will dispute his profiles. That should really interest him. But if that really interested him, he would demolish the reasonings offered by the Freemason Church, and yet he doesn't. So if he's trying to say, videos fucking destroying our heads, maybe there's something about him he doesn't want us to see. And that is whatever the value of the Freemason religion is to him on a personal level. Because professionally he'd be more of a gun. He'd be making these profiles that would actually impress the person who is saying, you suffer from this. And the person would go, wow, like your mind is amazing. What you worked out is so amazing. But instead he's like, the best he can do is video killed the radio star. You know, it's so moronic. So I say that him being in favor of the Freemason Church is because, yeah, it might be that. Might be there was some movement or action between him and his mother. His father told him off for it. He hated it. He's escaped it by moving from Tasmania to the mainland and starting Capital Chemist. But he keeps leaking clues back to this event in the claims that he makes, you know, such as gay people are gay because of something between them and their mother. That's certainly not true. Anyway, it's only Roger Toll also wants to insist that song lyrics by male singers are of your prescriptive moral comprehension. So maybe back in Tasmania, you know, he hates remembering the sound of his dad's voice telling him off for whatever it was between him and his mum. He says nothing when about female artists and their song lyrics, whether he thinks they're morally prescriptive or not. So that's perhaps what I think happened. He was back in Tasmania. You know, if you're working for him and you make a joke about Tasmanians being inbred, he'll laugh at that, smile, like, so funny, so funny. But where it gets not funny is where he tries to think he's comprehended the conflicts of your mind. And you end up going, what the fuck system of ideas are you working from? You wind up getting left with, well, it's most probably the conflicts of his mind. And if that were true and he were hiding that, he would say things like, we make no mistakes. Like he said to me in 2010, we don't make mistakes. After a certain time, you will realize that if a person accosts you, then the things that they will say, and even the statements they will make, and the questions they will raise, they aren't necessarily to be owned up to by you. In fact, yeah. So when men like Roger Gary accost you, and you listen to what they have to say, then what you realize is that you don't have to own up to their lines of questioning. In fact, the questions they'll ask and the statements they will make, after a time you realize they're only disclosing things about them. If you are indeed a rights defender, there are certain things that don't appeal to you and certain things you never do or would condone. And they don't comprehend that. So, yeah, there are such things as stupid questions as well as stupid statements. So you have to think about how you will word your questions. So if you're trying to research people and your epistemology, your metaphysics boils down to the initiative of the Masonic Church, you know, you may phrase stupid questions and make stupid statements, and that might be all you do. But my concern is that other citizens who are rights defenders are at risk of being illegitimately put under the Mental Health Act just because pharmaceutical company owners find them of appeal to study and observe. It is a concern if genuine rights defenders are being mistaken for dangerous minds. by men who haven't realized that they can make dangerous errors because they haven't just nullified their stupid faith, misplaced faith, you know. That's their lesson, I think. That all their faith is misplaced and means nothing. Their beliefs are rubbish. That's for them to go through and think about. How much damage would you do in other people's lives because you won't admit your religion is a bluff and a lie and a fraud, and it means nothing. Not only does it mean nothing, but you'll mistreat others because you haven't gone against it. So think about what areas professionally you want to be involved in. Do you want to say that you're apt to study society? By what criteria? Well, we own a franchise and we go to the Freemason Church. We'll go study 16th century culture and history. Don't study this century. Like all you've shown is that you are inept and ill-equipped to study this 21st century because you're invested in 16th century church beliefs, and you think it's an edge because the church is known for its secrecy. Well, the secret's out. It's a dumb belief system. It's just another dumb belief system. That's all it is. The secrecy might have meant it took longer for the rest of this society to call it out and go, well, these Freemasons are just as stupid as Cardinal Pell. Trying to think of something formulaic that I could say, and that might be that perhaps the worst things Roger Toll will try to ultimately say about me, therefore, are things that you could say back to him, well, is that because you're yet to say these things to the Freemason Church? But it might not just be that. I'm just having a thought. You know, if he says I'm a canary, it might be, well, my vocabulary isn't 16th century minimal. I have philosophy that's very minimal. But, yeah, it's very hard to try and be a critic and then say, oh, aren't I a great critic? Because now I'm going to this 16th century faggoty church. Wow, what a critic. So, you know, so then he'll attract to a rights defender and try to criticize them on the basis of things he has denied himself the need to say and call out on his Freemason church. That's what I sort of think he does. So, you know, he's trying to pick on me in relation to video. Maybe the speeches he sees and the talk he sees occur and transpire when he attends a Freemason church are so beyond belief and deserving of criticism that he just goes through the motions, but he reserves the criticisms to lump on a member of society instead of his church. There's an expression: before you criticize someone, you should first walk a mile in their shoes, because that way when you criticize them, you are a mile away and you have their shoes. I don't think members of a 16th century secretive church that is theistic and positing the existence of non-existing beings make for the best of society's esteemed critics. The company of people who are celebrating life daily. is something that I miss, but I saw a lot of it DJing. You don't see it working in pharmacy. But it's actually very good for your health to be in their company. So I can and have encountered people trying to say and ask, do I think I'm greater than, everyone or other people? And the answer is no. But if the alternative option is that you have to accept the Queen's religious story as an account of humanity, the answer is no, I won't do that either. I see the Bible essentially as a book that is telling you stories that now, at this time in history, are it's essentially the logistics of a series of human rights protests. We would protest the claim that the species originated from acts of inbreeding in a garden, and we would protest that a nice long-haired man gets executed. So these Christians who read the Bible as if it's God telling them what to believe in, if they accept the crucifixion, they will in turn turn a blind eye to societal injustices. Because the crucifixion today can only be comprehended as an unjust execution. All the reasons that offered in the Bible today, we would not execute someone for those reasons. So yeah, the Queen says, to what greater source of inspiration can we turn to than to the imperishable truths to be found in that treasure house called the Holy Bible? Well, conversely, I can see that, if a queen wanted to bolster her ego over the populace, one way she could do that would be, let's tell the population that they're all inbred, and then I'll be sovereign, mega sovereign. Tell them they're all inbred and the executed man died for them. So they're inbred and they have a death on their conscience from 2,000 years ago. Well, that will do their heads in, but then what happens is, if there's a prominent artist or writer or someone, some sort of star, the Queen will want to take emotional credit for them and say, well, I reign over this society and now I've created this prominent person who I'm going to offer a knighthood to. So when she gives a knight to someone, she personally thinks that, how good is the Queen, how good she is for making society the way she has. But then conversely, if a pedophile were to emerge in the populace, and the story of inbreeding in the Garden of Eden did his head in and made him pursue kids, will Queen Elizabeth II admit that her Bible made a pedophile? Will she take credit for that? So I find that interesting. My option generally is not to be personally interested in monarchism. But when I look at it, I do genuinely think that if Queen Elizabeth read a story about inbreeding in a garden and an unjust execution of a nice man with long hair, then she would say, this is a horrible story. I'm not gonna... I should warn the population that they should be protesting these 6 stories. Instead, she calls it the greatest source of inspiration. No wonder she has no king. You know, will she go into a garden with Prince Charles and do the electric boogaloo? Yeah, Christianity is sick. It's a recipe to be sick and fucked in the head, to turn a blind eye to injustice, and to smile at concepts of like incest. It's truly sick. I would say to the Queen's face that it's sick, and I would like to see her replies, because conflating the image of God with you know, Cain, the first son of Adam and Eve, Cain. His time came to make babies. Which woman did he find? Oh, the only woman on the earth was once again his mother Eve. How fascinating. No, maybe sovereignty is a bullshit idea. Maybe no one is the greatest. And the only way that a person can assert themselves as the greatest is by debasing everyone else. Like teaching them that they're all inbred from a garden, as Queen Elizabeth II has. So perhaps she doesn't even believe in these stories herself, but she can see that her sovereignty is reinforced because of the way that she imposes endorsement of the biblical stories and texts onto the populace, and she endorses them as the greatest source of inspiration. Any other philosopher is a better source of inspiration. You know, you can take the pages of Genesis, the stories of incest in a garden, you can spit on them. If you get diarrhea, you can wipe your ass with the pages of the chapters of Genesis. You can grab the story of the crucifixion, spit on it. If you get diarrhea, you can use the story of the crucifixion as toilet paper. The Greek philosophers, at the same time that Christianity first launched and commenced, there were Greek philosophers around the same time in history that truly had better ideas than the Christians. But you will see from history that the Christians were also quite passionately violent. And one way to actually like violence is to go home thinking, well, God made me from incest in a garden. You know, you'll find who these people are because they're tempers. They have really short fuses. You challenge their belief system and they don't know what to say, so they tend to get aggressive, think aggressively. Grr. So since the basic statements of the Mental Health Act, they don't directly say that they're an affront to the Rights Charter, but if an organization's trying to say you're more or less both, I mean, they can't tell you you're not human, but if they're trying to say that the Mental Health Act applies to you and the Human Rights Act applies to you, it means more or less that healthcare officials will be having you monitored at any given time, and I understand that from my work training as well. So that's very annoying, because it means they're contradicting the Privacy Act. When are you truly alone? I definitely do think that the prospect of understanding ways in which healthcare officials can make people sick should be addressed more and talked about more, because just putting your whole life and all your trust in um, there was an ironic element to working in pharmacy that I always enjoyed, which was you tend to get along with everyone you serve if you know that you love, that you hate the fact that the person is sick and has come to you for help. If you can feel that essentially it's ironic, you have to hate the fact that people have come to you. Like, it's what I was taught by a really intelligent locum. Sort of said, you do your job properly and no one will need to enter your store because they'll be too healthy. So when you're serving customers in pharmacy, you feel that you hate that they have even had to come to you in the first place, and then they actually appreciate your effort because they're not coming to pharmacy to get attention or socialize. But yeah, you should also protest this idea of the more sick people the better. The more sick people, the more rebates and scripts and all that. I don't think you can indulge that ethic, anti-ethic. To my YouTube channel that's crap. This is
Hello, YouTube channel that's not so crap.
we have a shit channel, don't we?
No, we don't have. It's not that shit. But I tell you what we do have. Shit people in Canberra. Very shit. So shitful that they have no lives. Well, guess what? I've got one. I will no longer be investing in their shitty little existence.
Good on you.
Yeah.
Take care.
On them being so shitful.
Good one. Thank you for that. I think at heart I operate on a lot of eccentric ideas, and I pay attention to the way other people reason that I meet, but if their minds are too set and fixed with certain terminologies, and you end up getting binded in a way you can't comprehend, then it's better to just retreat, the reclusifix. Go home and dangle on my own reclusifix. You can also argue that you're always alone, you always have been. You can never leave your body and everyone is just brainwaves. Everything external to you is always brainwaves. So, there's a cliche story that people say, don't love a woman because of her physical beauty. But you can also explore the alternative too far. That you love minds and deep thinking minds, and then you explore that to the end, and that's what you find. You are only ever brainwaves. She's made of brainwaves. And then deep thinking becomes the new superficial. Hey Graham. How are you, man? So yeah, I do think that society occasionally pitches the argument that if they think you like someone for how she looks, but for me, being told I'm a deep thinker, to me that's it's more or less the same as saying, saying something about looks. If deep thinking ends with, I could never disprove that You'll only be brainwaves to me. I'll only be brainwaves to you. I think other people trying to tell you how you love makes them pretty fucked. So the Freemasons' statements actually prove that they believe in the forged and interpolated Gospels. They believe in them as proof that Jesus is an ideological martyr. But I know that they genuinely can't believe that once they admit they're forged and interpolated texts. So strip the interpolated text away and you have the story of an unjust execution. So because the Freemasons don't admit this, the two of them in Capital Chemist will essentially study someone who is at home alone and sad and think that they're concealing some act they've committed due to an ideological cause that they hold. And that's the error in judgment they'll make until they admit these texts are known to have been plagiarized and forged. And academic scribes and scholars have said that for the last 200 years. But the Freemasons are 16th century poofters, so they will be liars and con men until they improve their study ability. They actually are closer to being Christian than I am. I'm an antichrist. You know, how much idiocy do they want to uphold? Jesus was a martyr because our proof is forged texts written, 50 years after he was put to death. Well, that's not proof of anything. That's what we've known for 200 years. If I write bullshit, Roger Toll can fart out his ass and fly over Parliament House in a single bound. Are you going to say that's Roger Toll's ideological cause to blow magic air out his ass and fly over Parliament House? That's Roger's cause, so he gets put to death. He fart flied over Parliament House, and he's magic. These Freemasons are idiots. They are pretty much Christians. Yeah. Still dumb believers. That's their problem. They've got some arguments that Christians can't rebut, but they can't rebut my arguments. So they think studying me from a distance is interesting. Just admit there's no supernatural dimension, you dickheads. No supernatural dimension exists. Got it? 16th century?